is both sad and also something I wanted to start to talk about, as Mr. Frederick may have said. You want to talk about careers and sports marketing, sports management. This is everything I've done in my career. Every job I've had that somebody actually gave me a paycheck for. So, as you can tell, I've been in the business about 50 years. I started when I was 15 as a stringer for a local newspaper in Albuquerque, New Mexico. Became a disc jockey, became a reporter, became an announcer, went from announcing to producing, went from producing to executive, went from executive to entrepreneur, helped start companies. At some point you can ask me the questions about any of these if you want when we get to the question and answer part, but I tell people when I start one of these conversations that don't think of this as me personally, all the things I was able to do, because my career has been ridiculous, ridiculously good. What I'm saying is, this represents all the opportunities that were out there. And there's actually more opportunities in sports now than there have ever been in history. Up here, right here, starting with NBC, there were 3 networks. There was no ESPN, there was nothing else. So I was when I became a producer at NBC Sports, and I produced the Super Bowl for NBC, there were 9 jobs like mine in the whole country. Now there's like 900 of those kinds of jobs. So the point of this document isn't what I've done, but just all the different opportunities that you may not even think about. The other thing that I would make a point of is when you're talking about sports marketing, you're learning about sports marketing, I learned from a person much smarter than me that it's really what's called affinity marketing. And I'll steal from his page because I want to make sure I say it right. Affinity marketing is when you suspend economic reality for closely held passions. So you'll spend ridiculous amounts of money for a ticket, ridiculous amounts of money for a t-shirt, ridiculous amounts of money that you would never ordinarily have done because of your affinity for whatever that is. In sports, politics is a little like that, entertainment's a little like that, but sports is where it really comes forward, as you can tell. And that's why you're in the industry, I'm thinking, because you have an affinity for sports. Drink of water. Oh, I don't want to talk too long. I want you guys to be able to ask me questions, but the main thing I want to make clear on, the difference, it's interesting, Leon, between the start you start with Learfield, which is a marketing company, but started out in the radio business. Learfield started out as a radio company, and they originally did agricultural radio, and then they did sports radio, University of Missouri, teams like that. Excuse me a second. Probably the biggest thing that you will learn from me has to do with media itself. Media is the driver of everything you're going to do in sports. Now I say that not because it's where I'm from, but that's where the value is from. Anyone who's selling marketing, like Learfield does, anyone who's doing online affinity things like Zebra does, the interest is driven by media. The 170 million people who watch the Super Bowl, the millions of people who watch college football playoffs, that watch all these other things. Media is the one way we reach out to everybody, and we deliver the message of the team or the institution. So probably in your world, the more you know about media, the more valuable you will be in your jobs. How many of you have internships right now? That's pretty impressive. One of the things I'm doing now, at the bottom of the sheet, is Media Executive in Residence at the University of North Texas. What that is a goal of mine from the day I started, which is to create programs at the university level that actually reflect the real world. Sports marketing, sports management, sports media are from what we call a do-it profession. You can take all the classrooms you want, you can learn from really good instructors, but we come from a world where doing it is the most important. That's why those internships are so incredibly valuable. There is nothing you will learn in a classroom as valuable as an experience as an intern. Even the bad ones. As a matter of fact, maybe even especially the bad experiences. Because then you're going to know what not to do, what you don't want to do. And you'll learn from that either way. And I've had good bosses, bad bosses, good experiences, bad experiences. But what I've had, as you can tell from this, is a lot of experiences. Give you an example. What I talk about in our industry, what will make you most successful in our industry in particular, is the 3 qualities I call for that I think need to either come to you naturally or you have to work at. Curiosity, initiative, and integrity. And I'll explain why those are the 3 biggest ones. If you naturally are curious, if you see something happening and you want to know why it happened, I tell the story of a guy walks across campus with a t-shirt that says, "Save Joe." 10 people walk by him. 8 people walk past, don't think anything about it, see the t-shirt, keep going. 1 person stops and says, "Who's Joe and why does he need saving?" The 10th person goes home, goes on Google, looks everything up, tries to figure out who Joe is and why he needs saving. Those last 2 people are media and information people that are driven by their curiosity. If you're naturally curious, you're like an athlete who has special skills. You're going to be ahead of everybody else. The guys who aren't naturally curious, the people who are not naturally curious are the ones who you're going to have to work harder at, just like an athlete has to work, someone has to work harder if they're not as athletically gifted. Curiosity will drive everything you do. The best marketers I know are listeners. The people who actually listen. You're going to come across in marketing, it's all about the pitch. You come up with a great idea, you present it to your client, to your sponsor, to your team, and then you make a pitch and you really sell them on what you think you want to do for them. But if you haven't listened to them, if you haven't heard what they have to say about how they see themselves, your pitch won't be as successful as the one from the people who actually listen to them. So the curiosity side of it, the actually wanting to know more than what's right in front of you, is a very valuable asset. If you don't have it, you're going to have to work at it a little harder. Initiative is, again, almost natural. Either you have initiative and you're a self-starter. The fact that all of you are in this class and that you're doing internships is a pretty good example of initiative. You're not waiting for somebody to tell you what to do. You're not waiting for someone to give you an idea. You think of it yourself. The best example I can give of initiative is the experience I had when I was 18 years old. I wanted to get a job in radio. And I walked into a radio station in my hometown of Albuquerque. Back in the day when radio was, you didn't have satellite, again, showing my age, but still a place you could get a job. Walked in and asked for a job. The general manager of the radio station said to me, "Do you know anything about sports?" Luckily, I said, "Yeah, I do." He said, "Okay, there's an Associated Press wire machine. Tear something off. You're going to give our sports report in 10 minutes. Put me in a booth. The guy operating the board cues me, and I had a 15-minute sports report to do, and I ran out of stuff on the AP wire after 10 minutes. So for the next 5 minutes, I BS'd my way through the last 5 minutes, which, by the way, BS is an extremely valuable trait in marketing and especially in sports. Just so don't kid yourself, it is extremely important. So after I'd finished this 15 minutes, I walked out of the booth. The general manager of the radio station said to me, "That's good, you're hired, you start Monday. You have your FCC license, right?" Okay, now in those days, you had to operate a board. You had to be licensed by the Federal Communications Commission. To be on the air, you had to have a license, you had to know how to operate the actual control board. I didn't know that at the time, but I said, "Yeah, of course I have my FCC license." And then I walked out of the building with a job and went immediately home to try and find out what a third-class FCC license was. No Google, no sources other than the phone book and just a lot of phone calls and questioning. I found out that the FCC licenses, you have to take a test. And next time they were having a test in my hometown was in the spring, which is 3 months away, and I start on Monday. So I found out by phone calls that the FCC had an office in Denver where you could take the test in a day and get your license in a day. So I booked myself, I was 18 years old, booked myself on a flight, flew to Denver, took a cab to downtown Denver to the FCC office, took the test. They said they'd mail it to me. I said, "No, if you don't mind, I'll wait." waited for the test, they handed me my certificate, got on a plane, flew back, and I started a job that Monday. That's initiative. That's also almost insane. But I give it as an example of the reason I got where I am. In a lot of ways, that story tells you. And I'm telling you, bluffing your way into something is a part of the deal. But once you get there, you have to produce. Somewhere along the line, someone saw something in me. When I was an announcer, I was actually a play-by-play announcer by the time I was 26, 27 years old. And someone saw something in me, as Mr. Frederick said, and brought me to New York. I was hired by a fellow named Roone Arledge, who basically is the godfather of television sports, in those days at ABC Sports. He saw something in me before I even auditioned, and he said, I'm going to hire you. I moved to New York City without any idea how to, it took me a year to ride the subway. I was so out of my element in New York. I walked everywhere. Pathetic. But someone said to me, you have the ability, you're a storyteller. We're going to put you behind the camera. A year after that person told me that, I produced the Super Bowl for NBC, which is still one of the highest rated Super Bowls ever. If you want to ask, it's 13. That's how long ago I produced the Super Bowl. I produced 4 Final Fours. If you're a sports fan, you must be. I produced the Larry Bird Magic Johnson National Championship game for NBC. I was 29 at that time. So again, I keep talking about how insane my career was. Someone along the line kept giving me opportunities, and again, I had to deliver. And that's how my life has gone. When I went to work for Ted Turner, these are all, again, it's not about me, it's about opportunity and what you do with an opportunity. I got hired to go to work for Ted Turner. How many of you even know who Ted Turner is? Yeah, that's where we're going. Ted Turner is the founder of CNN, thanks. He was the owner of the Atlanta Braves. He started what's called WTBS, what is now TBS, TBS and TNT, and the Cartoon Network, and Turner Classic Movies. There are 11 Turner channels now. When I got there, there was 1, TBS. And then we launched CNN. Going to work for Ted Turner was a total freedom to do anything. He was a bit of a lunatic. But to give you a classic example of, again, the opportunity, he walked into my office one day and said, what's the biggest sporting event in the world? And I said, the Olympics. He said, no, I mean the other one. And I said, well, the World Cup. He said, yeah, I want it. Go get it. This was in 1988. The U.S. had barely fielded a soccer team in those days. I flew to Italy and with just a little bit of guts and baloney, bought the U.S. rights to the World Cup in 1990 in Italy. Incredibly, the U.S. team qualified. And all of a sudden, we were the place to watch soccer. Long before anybody else in this country was paying attention, Ted Turner saw it, spent the money. We got laughed at. We had to televise all 46 matches of the World Cup live back to the United States, and that's when we created TNT. The TNT network didn't exist until the World Cup, where we needed a channel to put all these matches on, and that's when TNT started. Again, opportunity, we just went with it. Working with Ted Turner, I ended up and we'll wrap up my career with, as a part of working for Ted Turner, I ended up negotiating directly with Fidel Castro for the right to televise an event in Cuba, which is the Pan American Games, which I spent almost 3 years going back and forth to Cuba and still have friends there, all through sports. Turner created a thing called the Goodwill Games, which was like a little Olympics, basically between the US and Russia, but would invite other athletes from all over the world. The 1994 Goodwill Games were in St. Petersburg, Russia, which is a fabulous city, much old city. That's where the czars live. It's a beautiful city in Russia as opposed to Moscow. So I spent 2 years going back and forth to St. Petersburg to prepare to televise the games. When I started going to Russia, I've been to Russia about 20, 25 times. When I started going to Russia, it was communist. By the time we did the Goodwill Games, they had a thing called glasnost, and it was a free market. And when it became a free market, the deputy mayor of St. Petersburg was assigned to me to be my connection to the city while we were going to televise. We were televising 16 events, track and field, gymnastics, swimming and diving, basketball, all in St. Petersburg, which really didn't have a lot of infrastructure because they weren't communist anymore. And the deputy mayor was assigned to me for a year and a half to work with me directly on pulling this off. And the deputy mayor of St. Petersburg, Russia at the time was Vladimir Putin. None of us had any clue that he would eventually be the president. All we knew is he was this dumpy little KGB guy. But he was the guy I worked with. That was what sports did for me. That's the kind of things I got to do in sports. As Mr. Frederick mentioned, I've been a part of 7 Olympic Games, all over the world, 6 continents. I will tell you, I am not going to Brazil. I helped do some of the preparation, but I have no desire to go there. It's going to be chaos. It will be total chaos. I have no interest in that. So, circling back to you guys, what does this all mean to you? It's eyes open, think about all the opportunities. If there's an opportunity, grab it. I would encourage, the fact that there's only 1 female in here is really disappointing.
There's 2, she's small, the other one's 6.
Okay, there need to be a dozen because the opportunities for women in sports are just blowing up. There's just so many opportunities, but again, there's so many things you can do. Don't feel, whatever you're interning in, look around all the people. You may have a typical interns, you'll have a funnel, which you're allowed to do just what they tell you to do. But boy, keep your eyes open and see what else is going on. Ask questions. You'll have contact with me. What I wanted to talk about a little more was, what does it take to be successful? We've talked about first of all, the curiosity, the initiative, the integrity part is another thing that's important. There have been a lot of people who have come and go in the sports business who came in, got rich, tried to get rich, and have gone through, and really aren't still around. And we know who they are. Those of us who've been in the business like I have for 50 years know who they are. There are people whose reputations, and I really was very protective of my reputation. There are jobs I left because I felt like this was not going to be something I could live up to, or this was a person I could definitely work for. That's only happened a couple of times, but it was a clear decision on my part that I was going to do something different. I couldn't work under these conditions, under these circumstances. You'll see some of these things. Some of them will be obvious to you from the outside. I mean, today, in the last 60 days, probably maybe 6 months, ESPN and Fox, which has spent a fortune on rights, buying up the rights to the NFL and college football and NASCAR and all these things, they're now in the business of laying off people. They're laying off, I think Fox will lay off this week probably about 150 people, either on buyouts. Fox nationally, not Fox here in Dallas. Those kinds of things are going on because people were irresponsible with their money. So you find out, you know pretty early where you can work and where you can't work, where you'll be comfortable and not be comfortable. But I would always encourage you to take the first job that comes your way, work at it till you can't stand it anymore, and then just keep learning from the experiences. Along those lines, one of my roles at UNT, and this is the one I'm kind of most excited about, I've been working in the journalism school for the last 6 months, working with them on some professional programs and things like that, but now my role is going to change. And if we can get it done in higher education, the University of North Texas is going to start the first undergraduate sports marketing program in a public school in North Texas. We're probably going to start this fall with classes and be offered at our new Frisco campus. We've built a campus in Frisco in an office building, and we're going to start teaching some sports marketing, sports social media classes over there as the beginning toward, hopefully, in higher education, nothing goes fast, but hopefully over a period of time, UNT is going to have the sports marketing undergraduate and the sports management postgraduate degree program. The thing that's cool about this, and I won't pitch UNT to you because I don't know how fast it's going to take all the curriculum people to design it, that's higher education. The thing that is great about it, at least what I've been promised, is you'll be able to design the curriculum. It won't be, you have to do it in the School of Business. There'll be business classes, but there'll be classes out of kinesiology and fan management. There'll be classes out of merchandising and licensing out of a retail program we have at UNT. There'll be classes out of journalism that have social media and broadcasting. That's the idea is that in this new generation, you will actually design the classes you want to take to go toward that degree. It's pretty exciting. There's a few places that this is going on. A lot of the schools that if you're planning on going to, when you plan to go to college, if you're going to study sports marketing, most of them will put you in the business school. There's some universities that have specific sports marketing or management programs. Mostly they're at the postgraduate level, master's degree and stuff like that. The undergraduate tends to be a little diffused, scattered out. But I will tell you that there's going to be opportunity to do that, but this is still going to come back to, and I always hesitate, when I look at your resume, and you'll be able to ask me questions about that in a little bit. When I look at your resume, I'll be honest with you, I read the do it section first. What did you do? The fact that you get a degree will be impressive to me because it proves that you started something and you finished it. The guys I'm gonna hire are the people who've been doing it. And it doesn't mean necessarily an internship. A lot of the universities